Well, today we're going to get the methanol injection kit figured out and just kind of running for now so I can go out and test those 373s and get a little testing with the methanol. So I'm waiting for my 90-degree fittings to come in so I can run 2 sprayer nozzles right here. I only have 1 at this point in time. For this setup, on the chart, it needs to have around a 1500 cc's worth of methanol and water flowing through the system. So for right now, I'm going to plug this one off until that fitting comes in and just test it with 1000 cc's. So I'll mount that one here and just route the line out and around for now until my fittings come in. At least get a little testing on the car. Just a little history on this car from last year with being a 2-valve. I do have a AEM methanol injection kit. It's progressive. It's always been on the car. I was planning on pulling it off and going to a different route with a bigger pump and possibly bigger line for more flow. That's one thing I need to watch out for. Make sure I have enough flow going to the nozzles and make sure it's atomizing correctly going into the turbo. Actually, before I put both nozzles in, I'll have them both sitting out here and just hit the test on the pump and pump into the bucket here and make sure that it's spraying correctly before I actually put it under some power. So I'll show you how this is all set up on my car. Of course, you got your feed line here, and I got a vacuum line under here that needs to be hooked up to boost side. Go to the trunk here. It's nothing too special, but my tank's mounted. I think it's a gallon tank. Got this controller where you can put it wherever you want. I'll just put it back here so I don't ever bump it and mess something up on accident, but it's glued here. I'm waiting for it to dry. Got the pump, the lines going up through. It's pretty nice actually being this AEM setup. You can put it to where you want to start spraying, and then it ramps up to 100% by the time you get to your peak boost, wherever you set this at. So it's actually a pretty sweet little setup for what it is. I've never had any troubles. I've had 2 of them kits over the years. Inside the car here, we got 2 switches here and a little purge. Apparently this car had nitrous on at one point in time, but I took this switch here to arm it, and then there was actually a little light there to begin with in the cup holder, so I just kind of left it there. It's a good indication of like, hey stupid, you're spraying meth. And actually when you turn that little switch on, you can actually hear, once the dinger's off, the pump is in like a ready mode apparently. You can feel it kind of humming. And then if you hold the test button there, it will spray the nozzle over here. So I'll show you what that looks like with 1000 cc's. It actually sprays quite a bit. So it's got a pretty good pattern. It pulsates a little bit more than I think I would like it to be. But as long as everything is working good through the system, and as long as it's atomizing correctly and vaporizing through the turbo with all the heat and the pressure, by the time it gets sucked into the engine, it's already mixed through the air really well. It's a vapor at that point in time and not a liquid. I don't think I'll see any issues. And that's a lot of methanol injection to be spraying, you'd think. I mean, I couldn't imagine another 500 cc's on right here on this turbo. But they say they want you to spray your biggest shot towards the beginning of the volute, and then whatever after. And I got 4 holes in my turbo here, so I can play with location. But from what I found out, they want you to spray at the beginning so the whole volute gets wet and it sucks all the heat out of the turbo. And all that heat that's already in the turbo, it pulls out, shoves it down through the pipes and out your exhaust. Then just keeps everything cooled off. So I'm very interested to see how the methanol injection works on this setup. But let's get the nozzle hooked up since I just purged the system here. This is the fuel I use for Gary. It's 1-ethanol R. It's E85 base, pretty much. 117 octane. I have tested it. It's basically 100% ethanol, which is pretty crazy. It's got a pretty stink smell to it, just like all that E does, all that corn fuel. So the mixture I use for my methanol, I just get it from Boost Juice. It's pre-mixed. I thought about mixing my own. A lot of guys talk about doing an 80-20 mixture, 80% methanol, 20% water, which is pretty, I'd say that's pretty flammable. This is basically 50-50. I think it's 49% water, 51% methanol, or vice versa. I mean, so this stuff should work just fine. I've never had any issues. Oops. So this stuff should last quite a while. Matters how big of a spraying nozzle I'll be putting on. Just getting the rear end warmed up, transmission fluids warm. Also getting this engine up to temp. Another hot day here in Iowa, so that won't be a very hard thing to do to get everything hot. When I say hot, I just want everything nice and heat soaked on average, as if I was at the track. So I want the turbo to be fairly warm, just intake fairly warm. So when I spray that methane, it basically instantly vaporizes and sucks all the heat out through the engine. If I don't have the engine and turbo up to temp, most likely it won't vaporize correctly and suck out all that heat. So I just want to make sure all that's good to go before I go out and do some runs. Looking over the data on the last two little pulls I did on the highway there in third, off the get-go we're 100 degrees cooler, which is great. Just need to pull more fuel out. When I let off the throttle, I can watch some methanol spray out of my blow-off valve, so I know it's definitely pumping in there. Boost has not changed. It's around 18 pounds still, but I've not been able to get a full load and wind it up very well. So we'll do a couple more runs and see if that changes. If not, we'll put more springs in at some point. That third run was way better. Went from second to third, and actually third pulled this time. I think I had to really get my intake and my engine very warm, warmer than I was wanting to. I mean, not water temp, I'm just talking like heat soaked everything to make that spray mixture just vaporize. I didn't get after it too freaking hard because I was going through a little bit of a curve, but there's a lot of freaking traffic coming. I really didn't want to hammer down. Did it anyways. But showing a little bit more light at the end of the tunnel here. It's actually got a little bit more of a ramp in third than it did ever before. So we'll go back down the hill here and do it one more time. Temps are staying, instead of doing 250 degrees by the end of the run, which, I mean, I'm just doing second to third. On the low side of getting into the throttle, 113 degrees starting out. Of course, it's going to ramp up, but it's more controlled now. Instead of going to 250 degrees, I'm up to 180 on this one. And a couple runs before, it was like 150. So, I mean, that's a it's staying under 200, so that's pretty good for just 1,000 cc's. And I'm going to add probably another 500 cc's to it. That number should hopefully drop to that 120-ish, 130-ish mark on air intake temps, which would be great. So it's been about 20 minutes. I'm back here at the shop. Definitely had to get this housing and intake fairly hot to even make it vaporize correctly. The first couple of runs, I could tell when it was spraying through, when I let off the throttle, I could just watch methanol blow out of the blow-off valve there. It's kind of cool to see for a split second. But so yeah, I did 4 runs or more. The first couple were pretty shitty, but I was expecting that on getting everything tuned in. I pulled fuel out, and apparently it was not enough. As soon as that thing started spraying, it was starting to choke things down. But the last 2 were very reasonable. The very last run was actually the best one so far. AFR stayed really steady. Did not go very rich because, you know, I'm spraying methanol through the engine, and that's basically another injector. The boost did not rise at all after spraying meth. I'm very surprised on that, on the lower intake temps. Or maybe that's all these springs can do on how my hot side's set up. Maybe it flows so well that it's not holding enough exhaust back. It's just basically bleeding off a little more than it should. In that case, I will just add another spring or 2 to get that poundage up to where I want it to be. I want it to be at 2022 for right now. The major restriction on everything is the damn camshafts I have in this engine. They're 0304 Cobra cams. I mean, I got a fairly good turbo setup, pipe, good intake setup, good header setup. It all flows really well, but them camshafts are just holding back a lot of potential. I've heard a lot of guys not liking them at all, even though they are meant for like a blower setup from factory. But definitely get some new camshafts in there this winter. Pull the engine out, just check things over, degree them in, and send it for next year. So things are looking up right now. Actually, in a month from now exactly, the ice cream cruise at Omaha is going on. I-29 track. About 4 hours away. That's where I'd like to take Gary and debut him. Yeah, at I-29 they have a big car show the first day, and then later on that night they have a no prep race. And then also the next day after the no prep race is called race day. Burnout contest, they have roll racing, then they have racing on the strip. Pretty sweet deal. Just a good time, a lot of people out there with all sorts of cars. Definitely like to debut Gary there, and possibly go for a personal best. It'll be a prep track on the race day, so we'll probably turn Gary up and just let it eat as much as I can. With as long as the tires are holding, I'll give the car some more poundage. But until we can get those 373s to hook up, we'll just leave the boost where it's at, hence no controller. All I can do is retard timing down a little bit off the launch for so many seconds. That's probably the only way I'm going to make this work. So until we can get the car to launch, we'll start turning Gary up and try to go for a personal best and just get some more data out of the car. Because after Ice Cream Cruise is over with at Omaha in a month from now, I plan on pulling the engine, transmission. But the engine will be pulled out to mainly just service it, look things over. I know it has not been ran much, but it'll be down for the winter. Just get a head start for next year. Every time I go out for a damn drive also, I need to make sure my helmet or anything that's flying around in here is out, because every time I have my laptop sitting there, I go up for a drive, I hammer down, and either something flies into it then, or while I'm braking. There's times I had papers in here and they're flying all over. I can't see my damn screen to see what's going on for my data log or whatever. So I only have to worry about one shift for now on. Get the gearing for that 9-inch in and suspension. Hopefully next year will be looking a lot better than this year. This year is mainly just working with issues and getting stuff to work correctly. But definitely like and subscribe.